This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
As followers of Jesus, in whom all things were made, we acknowledge the Darug people as the traditional custodians of the country on where this podcast is recorded. We recognise their continuing connection to the land and waters and thank them for protecting this land and its ecosystems since time immemorial. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and we extend that respect to all First Nations peoples listening today. Warning. This episode contains mentions of addiction and also contains some strong language which has been beeped out. Listener discretion is advised.
I had attempted detox rehab 49 times. I've been
49?
I've been in. I was known on a first name basis at all of our public systems, Basement 82, Gorman House, Herbert Street Clinic, Who's, William Booth. Like, I've been in and out of all these places 49 times. And I mean, really, the number is a summary that I make up, but it was my 50th attempt that I'm still here. You know, on the 15th of September 2009, I became 1 day clean.
I'm Georgia and welcome to Finding Hope, the podcast that reminds you of the good in the world. Each episode tells the story of someone who has found real hope in challenging times and made the world a bit of a better place along the way. Episode 68, Danny Shannon. Ten years ago, Danny Shannon's life was a bit bleak. From homelessness, heroin addiction to time in prison, he was wandering in the darkness, hoping for a way back out into the light. For many, it may have seemed impossible, but Danny did it. He climbed his way out. He's sitting with me today. And today he sits before me as a counselling graduate, an entrepreneur of a brand new mental health and recovery app called Encapsulator, which I'm really excited to chat to you about. Danny, I am so proud of you. I don't even know you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, George. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I should mention it's been 14 years, 3 months and 29 days since I've had a drink or a drug. So, and you know, it is a story of hope. Like, I never thought I'd be sitting here. And as I mentioned just earlier about me sitting across the road 8 years ago, my mate saying one day you'll be getting an interview there. It's crazy.
And here you are.
Yeah, it's so nostalgic to think that.
I'm so thrilled.
Yeah, thank you.
Danny, let's go back to the start because it's a long story. It's a complex story. Tell me about your early life, your childhood. What was that like?
Yeah, I often, look, I've told this story many times and I kind of know it. I have this beautiful, loving mum, a loving mum who is the bomb. I always give her a shout out in everything I do because I truly believe it's her values and morals that I have today that have kind of given me such a big boost in this journey, in the stuff that I'm doing. My dad, he's awesome too, but he was a criminal. Well, they both do. I am my mum and dad for sure. I think that's one of the things we pick up in working in this industry, you know, like I truly was a product of my environment. However, all my dad's behaviours that I picked up pretty quickly, I feel like I've left most of them behind and I'm holding on to some of the good stuff Mum taught me. But my dad's a legend too, you know. So picked up drugs at a young age, at the age of 14.
What prompted that?
Yeah, we'd done a move. My mum and dad thought they'd give it one last hurrah and try and put the relationship, because they were a bit rocky or very rocky. That's my dad. And they moved up to Bundaberg, where we already knew a family friend that moved up there previously. The night I arrived in Bundaberg, I got drunk, stoned, and I got on these nitric oxide gas things called, they nangs, they're putrid things that kids are doing these days. And that was my introduction to drugs and alcohol. And basically it started there. It got more and more over the next sort of 6 months, and ultimately leading to me picking up heroin at 15.
Tell me, most people I think listening to this podcast wouldn't know what heroin feels like, what addiction may feel like at all.
Good.
And I'm glad about
Yeah.
that. But like, tell me, like, what did that feel like? What was
Heroin?
the experience? Yes, genuinely.
Yeah, well, all right, it's good. I don't get asked that often. I try not to negative rave too often, but I mean, and look, it's funny how I've automatically put it into a positive thing where you're talking about it as a real negative thing, but heroin is very intense, you know. Injecting heroin especially was this feeling like one thing I've heard over and over again is it just numbs the feelings and it makes you feel euphoric. But the best way I could describe it was when I would have a hit of heroin, it's like the outside of my body would start off with this warmth or this glow, and as it would come in and in, sort of towards my soul, this nice warm, fuzzy, glowy feeling, euphoric feeling. It's like when you get right to the middle bit, it's like that's when... And that all happens in about 4 or 5 seconds. So, and you feel on top of the world, I guess. I mean, I know because I've broken my leg not so long ago and I was on some heavy medication. It's the same shit. So if you break a leg, for example, and they put you on, morphine, it's very, very similar to that same thing. But yeah,
I can see in that description, like, why you can almost see why people become addicted, because they're just looking to numb their life, numb the experiences, right?
Yeah. No, and look, for me, it's not as if I ever felt I was trying to numb anything, but I've dug deep into this. I've done lots and lots of work. I mean, I was living on the streets after that move up to Bundaberg. My mum and dad both moved back to Sydney with fully my encouragement. Go, guys, I'm sweet. And I ended up living up there, couch surfing in between a few mates. So if you really break it down, there's reasons why I understand why I did become an addict. But really, I never felt like I was really numbing anything. One thing I know, and I think it's important that I share this, the day I picked up drugs, I just never stopped. Like, I just became almost this animal overnight with the obsession and compulsion to get and use more drugs. And if that hadn't kicked off, it wasn't until I used heroin for the first time that it really began. Like, from that day onwards for the next 17 years, I never missed a day of being stoned unless I was completely incapacitated in prison. And I was usually stoned in prison, but there was some days that I couldn't get on. So, so it really went from a pretty good kid. You asked about my childhood. I was quite a popular kid growing up. I was a good skateboard rider. And because I had a bit of, we used to build ramps in my house all the time, skateboard parks. We'd go and knock off building sites or schools and we'd bring all the material home, and Mum and Dad would let me build these ramps. And because of that, it brought a lot of kids to my house all the time. I used to skate a lot and I used to be really good, and that sort of brought friends. But the day I picked up drugs, they started to drop off, and by the age of 16, there was no one. I had no friends, I was way too crazy for all those guys, and my best mate was my co-offender, the guy who used to steal money with to buy heroin. And I say he's my best mate, but like, he used to rob me and I'd rob him. That's kind of the life of addiction.
There's no loyalty there.
There's no
rationality.
Loyalty. There's not.
So by 16, you were couch surfing in a boys' home for a little bit.
So by 16, I had been locked up in Cobham Boys' Home for first instant warrants, and also for writing a fraudulent cheque in my name. So I'd been locked up in boys' homes. By 18, I was locked up in Parramatta Prison. Spent my 18th birthday.
Talk to me about that experience.
Yeah, sure.
What's jail like?
Yeah, look, it's funny. It's not funny, but by that time, so I'm in Parramatta Prison. I'm 18. I'd already been to boys' homes. Not a long time, just 21 days, 28 days stint, and I kind of thought it's weird, but I kind of thought this is my life. I understood that this is probably going to be a lot of my life. drugs, heroin in particular, really had that feel that, all right, if you're a heroin addict, you're going to be in jail. And by the time, so what it was like, scary kind of, but I was very reckless, I never had any real regard for, I don't want to say for my life. It's not as if I had a mission to not be alive or anything, but I was gutsy, I would do anything, There was no fear, never held me back from much, which is probably another reason why I am where I am today, but also why I got myself in so much shit along the way.
And that recklessness kind of evolved and got you out of jail, not through any legal means, but you actually broke out of Silverwater prison.
Yeah. In 2001, on the 6th of February, it was my partner's birthday. Michelle, I'll give her a shout out. She's actually my son's mum. And she was pregnant with my boy too. And I'd spent some time in that jail, and I'd previously spent this is at Silverwater Jail, old Silverwater Jail. I'd previously spent about 2 years in that jail too. And I'd always noticed this little weakness in the security of the fence in one section. It's hard to explain, but it's the 20-foot fences, and then there's this big 4-foot barrel, which makes it impossible to get up over the barrel because you'd have to literally. But there was one part of the jail where the barrel went on the inside because two fences met, and that same spot just happened to be connected to the back of the visiting area. And I had, I don't know intentionally, but I had started doing this religious program called Kairos. Kairos was run by this legend, chaplain Peter Baines, who's no longer with us, and I know that because his daughter heard me talk about him beautifully enough in a previous podcast. And Peter Baines used to run this Kairos group. Now, honestly, I went because there was really good coffee and biscuits and to get out of the cells, and it just so happened I was in the visiting area on a Wednesday evening. I think it was Wednesday. It was my partner's birthday that day. I had this plan. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna scale that fence. At the end of the group, everyone's inside holding hands. I've snuck out the back, and I don't know how, but I've managed to scale this 24-foot fence. I always say the story how I just scaled it, and I know it was really difficult, but really, how the hell did I get my fingers in that fence and up that fence? But I think I was on the corner and I sort of managed to jump. Back then, I only weighed 65 kilos. I was, I had methadone addiction, heroin addiction. I was way more agile. Anyway, I got up into the top of that fence. I remember as I took that final leap, if I fall, I'm dead. But I got up on top, and as I was still in the middle of the jail at this stage. I'm not free yet. As I was heading towards the perimeter, an officer had spotted me up on the fence. So my plan had been foiled, and he was straight on the radio to the MEU and the police. And by the time that had happened, I just had to run. I jumped through razor wire, cutting my legs to pieces. I launched off the top of this 24-foot fence. I landed on my arm on the ground. So my arm was black from my shoulder to my wrist as I ran down towards Parramatta River, Holker Street. The top of the street, the squad was there, the police, the dog squad chasing me. I managed to jump a couple of fences, dive into Parramatta River. By this time, Polair, the helicopter was up there, and also water police. And I'd managed to get to the other side of the river. A massive swim. It was pitch dark, shark-infested river. I'm thinking I'm going to get bit by a shark, but I also thought I got to go. And anyway, I managed to make it to the other side of the riverbed where I was in mud up to my neck in these thick, sludgy mangroves, and I could see the water police just over there. I could hear the police helicopter above, but I was just like G.I. Joe in the mud, and they couldn't see me, and I got away. I crawled through this mud like G.I. Joe for 200 metres and came up on this little entry called Duck Creek, and I know this from the police report after the fact because the water police had shut down Parramatta River. They couldn't find me, and I got away. It was like And as I come out on Parramatta Speedway, which is where I exited, it was raining, and it's like some holier thing and just washed all this mud off me. And by the time I hit James Roos Drive, I was kind of clean from the mud. And I managed to pick up a taxi. I didn't mention, but my partner had a big stash of my cash outside, and I got in a cab. He picked me up after I was trying to steal a car. I had no luck. And half an hour later, my mum's house, my dad's house, and her house got raided, and we were off. I got caught.
I was going to say, that was my next question.
I got caught just 7 days later or 8 days later on the 14th of February. And I often tell people how it's such a romantic story. It was Valentine's Day. Yeah, and
got out for your partner's birthday and got recaptured.
Yeah, I got caught in Perth, by the way. I got caught in Perth. I thought the New South Wales police, the warrants wouldn't carry interstate, and I thought I'd be sweet, which is kind of true, but New South Wales police come looking for me and they tracked us down through... I wasn't very clever. I was desperate, really. Yeah. That's what it was.
I was going to say, what was your thinking behind this? Because you've got to be thinking, surely you're going to get caught at some... Like, you can't run forever.
I did not care. Yeah. I did not care. Okay. Look, my thinking was... Bless my mum and dad. They came to a hotel in Liverpool the following day and dropped off some more money to me. And I said to them, it's going to be okay. Like, just delusional. My arm is black, fully black. I'm cut to pieces from the razor wire. Mum and dad's there. They're handing over some money, which I'd kind of demanded because it was my money as well. They were holding on to the money my missus had. And I said to them, I've got a plan. I've got a plan. We're going to go to Perth. We've already arranged some identification. We're going to go to Perth. She's pregnant. My partner's pregnant. Just delusional. Imagine my mum's horror. My dad's pretty laid back. He used to visit me in jail. My dad was really cool, supportive. My dad used to put in orders on the stolen stuff he'd want, and me and my mate would go out and steal it. But my mum, she's just sitting in that hotel room thinking, like, I don't know what she would have been thinking. I just said, it's going to be okay, Mum. And we got to Perth, and on Valentine's Day, I got dragged outside the hotel poolside, kind of got bashed by the coppers because I was resisting arrest, thrown into the Perth watch house and shipped back to Bankstown Police Station where I...
An extended sentence, I'm guessing.
An extended sentence.
So how long were you in there after that? Yeah. Were you kind of in and out of jail or like in for an extended
So after that, I end up with what they call a E-classo, which means you're constantly, you only ever escape and you're in maximum security. I mean, I still spent a few more years after that in and out of jail. My offences were all drug-related offences. That's an easy throw-off to say drug-related offences, but it simply was steal car, high-speed police pursuit, break and enter. That's pretty much all I ever done. I've never been charged with any violent offences, which is, I think I'm quite proud of that because I'm a big softie like that, you know. So I spent the rest of that time in jail in maximum security after that.
You talked about, the Kairos program. Did you ever kind of go through any other, I guess, were you praying to anyone like in prison? Like, yeah, sure. Did you have like any kind of faith? Do you know
the Kairos program?
Yeah, because we're a Christian station.
Yeah, so we're a Christian station. Yeah. I knew that, okay? I thought I knew that, so I'm glad that you've clarified that. Yeah, let's touch on that. I'd never talk about this, but I'm quite... I grew up in private school. Well, I got kicked out of private school in year 8, but still I've had a religious kind of background, which I never followed or did anything right by. However, I entered recovery, or even back then, in my addiction I didn't pray or have any kind, but I've got a big spiritual connection today. And in recovery, I mean, it's something I do often is talk. I don't know if I'm talking to who I'm talking to, but I talk. It's kind of like a personal affirmation. I say stuff out loud. I hear what it is I want. I make that stuff happen, you know. I have a faith. That there's something out there way bigger and better than me, and I know it's got my back 100% too. If I do the right thing, good things happen now. That's been my experience, and that's kind of my spiritual summary. That's what I believe in. The universe. I am mesmerized by the moon. I was 10 months clean almost 14 years ago, and one night I looked up at the moon. This is my first real spiritual awakening. I think this is quite deep, but I looked up at the moon and I just got this mad connection, this feeling of gratitude. I'd never felt it before, and I thought, look at me, like I'm 10 months clean. I'm doing this. I never knew I could do that, and ever since that day, I kind of grew some kind of faith in the universe looking after me. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
And let's talk about, you say, if I do good things, if I do the right thing, then good things will happen to me. Let's talk about that turning point of your life, when you started to do, quote, the right thing. 14 years ago, you decided, basically, that you were going to stop drugs.
Yeah.
What prompted that decision? That's huge.
Thanks, Georgia. I had attempted detox rehab 49 times. I've been
49.
I've been in. I was known on a first name basis at all of our public systems. Not everyone, but Basement 82, Gorman House, Herbert Street Clinic, Who's, William Booth. Like, I've been in and out of all these places, and a bunch of them don't even exist anymore, but in and out of those places 49 times. And I mean, really, the number is a summary that I make up, but it was my 50th attempt that I'm still here. On the 15th of September 2009, I became 1 day clean at a detox out at St. Leonard's Hospital called Herbert Street. I definitely give a shout out to it because that place is the beginning of my journey. I went on to another rehab, which I always did, and I'd get there and actually I didn't always do that. I normally leave detox, but this time I went to rehab, which I'd been to before. It was called Foundation House. Big shout out to them too, because they are one of my last rehabs I did. It was a 28-day program. I did everything wrong in that program, but I did a bunch of things that I'd never done before. When I say I did everything wrong, I had my mobile phone on me still. That was not possible. You weren't allowed to do that. I also was engaged in this little bit of a fraud thing that was going on. I got caught for this later, so that's okay. Where I was getting money from the tax department, which is just normal, everyday criminal or addict thing behaviours. But at that time too, in that rehab, I started writing. They had this assignment book. I thought maybe I just need to start doing some assignments, Step one, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that my life had become unmanageable. That was the topic, and I'd started doing two main things. I started writing a gratitude list each day, 5 things that I was grateful for.
What were the kind of things on the list at the start?
I've got the book.
Really?
I've actually got the book. I haven't looked at it for years, but it'd be grateful to be clean, grateful to have, somewhere to stay, maybe grateful to have a laugh. Look, the really important thing that I think about gratitude list is starting to identify the small things in life that we're grateful for, not the bigger things, because if I can pick up and tap into those smaller things, I'm usually a happy kind of guy if I can do that. I also did this other thing that I call my personal inventory. I wrote down what did I do good today, and is there something I could do better tomorrow? And I came up with that. I came up with that little idea. I heard it somewhere else. That wasn't what the rehab had told me to do. I reckon this is one of the formulas when you're in rehab. What they tell you need to do is great. That stuff's going to help you. It's the stuff you do on top of that really makes a difference. The stuff that I'd heard going on. And look, to get to the turning point, Christmas Day 2009 was the day my life changed forever. So 14 years ago, I went home. I was in rehab. I went home for a family visit on Christmas Day, and to be honest, I didn't want to go. I was already full of shame and guilt. I'm 60 days clean. Family was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to stay at the rehab watching Netflix, but I did the right thing. I got home and I'm sitting around the family Christmas table surrounded by loved ones, neighbours, people I'd all hurt, stolen, robbed from every one of them. I remember just feeling sick with shame. And by the way, I felt that shame for years after. And that day I went home, back to the rehab, and I stood at the turning point. The turning point for me was Town Hall Station. King's Cross was to my right. I had money on me. I was going to buy heroin, and cocaine. This was my deal. I was doing it. I'm about to get on. But across the road was a 431. It was a bus that was going to take me back to rehab. And that day, for the very first time in my life, I thought about my decision to do it. Like, an addict doesn't change their mind. If they're about to get on, they just get on. Well, that day, finally, after 49 attempts, I thought, if I go up there, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to end up back in rehab, back in jail, dead, or what would happen if I got on that bus and went back to rehab? And that day, somehow a miracle happened. I didn't pick up that next drug, and one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, I continued to move forward. It certainly has not been easy. I've worked my ass off every single day. I continue to work my ass off. It has become a lot easier, but that day a miracle happened. I lost the obsession and compulsion to use drugs. I have not come close. I knock on wood every single time I say that, because I've not come close to picking up another substance since Christmas Day 2009. So it really is a miracle, you know?
It's huge.
Yeah.
Look, how, that image of you sitting around the table full with shame and guilt with your loved ones. How did you start to repair those relationships, especially with your son, your former partner as well? Like, how did that start to happen?
The former partner wasn't the problem. She was just as big as a rat bag as me. But
okay.
Time, one thing, and I think this is quite valid, I wasn't the guy that got clean and wanted to fix all the relationships, right? Now, I'll tell you, I'd heard, and I've been around for a long time, and I knew I would pretty much make a mistake and be back where I was going to be again. Like, there's no point in me trying to fix something if I know I'm going to go back there, which I felt like that for years. I never thought I was going to make it. I really didn't, Like, I'd had so much evidence to show that I was going to blow this again, So saying sorry was awkward as well, because if I had to go and say sorry to people, it's like I'm putting myself on show for what I'd done. It was through my actions I started to make amends. I didn't pick up again. I started going out to see family regularly. I mentioned that feeling of shame and guilt. It made me sick for years later. Like, every time I'd go and visit family, I never knew this back then, right? But I know it now. I'd feel tired. I'd get this overwhelming feeling like... And Mum said to me one day, she said, why do you come here and you always feel tired? Sometimes I'd even have a sleep. I'm a year clean, right? Yeah. And I'd still have a sleep. And I remember I got quite upset with her for saying it. And then what would happen is I'd get on the train. I lost my license for 40 years too. So back then I used to have to catch trains. I got on the train and I'd come back to the city where I live now, and I'd wake up every single time. And I started to see that pattern, and I started to realise that shame and guilt has got this physical feeling. Like, it actually impacted me very, very heavily. Like, honestly, the minute I'd get on the train, I'd start yawning. This crazy feeling. And I know it to happen still in my life today. Not so much for that, but some stuff I do is very heavy, the work that I do too. And I'm not completely... I continue to make amends. I continue to move forward. I'm not out of it. I'm certainly no angel. So yeah, it's a heavy, heavy feeling, I think, shame and guilt. And no wonder people pick up again. And just on that note too, my message would be to just hold on and keep working hard. And the shortcuts, the loopholes which I tried to take for so long, they never worked, The only way to go through it is to do the work. And I say that too because I've known a lot of people in my journey, in my 14 years, who have had significant amounts of clean time and maybe not worked through that stuff and end up picking up again. And I don't want that. And look, I don't know if I'm doing it right. This is just the way I do it. And thank God I'm still here today.
Tell me about your daughter. Well, your kids in general, because your
Yeah,
son's
sure.
22, your daughter's now 6,
Yeah.
but not actually your biological daughter. There's a bit of a special kind of situation as how she came into your life.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. So, yeah, me and my boy, I should just mention first, he missed out on the first half of his life. I was in jails, institutions. You know, he used to come and jump on me. That was the basis of our relationship. The poor kid, you know, and lucky in recovery, I've been able to build a pretty beautiful relationship with him. It's hard, him being 22, for us to become really, really close. I could probably put in more effort, I think. However, he's busy, he's got a career and a life, a girl. He's off doing his thing. My daughter, Amalia, and everyone knows my daughter as my daughter, but her mum and I were in a relationship, I'm going to say 8 years ago. My daughter's 6.5. We broke up because I didn't want children, funny enough, right? It's one of the reasons we broke up. And it was recovery and, you know, I was still learning what it is I wanted, what I'd done. She ended up knocked up. She ended up pregnant. And so the whole pregnancy, we knew that it wasn't my baby. It couldn't have been. We'd broken up. We hadn't had sex. But towards the end of her pregnancy, the dad had disappeared. And I had come back from a trip from overseas, from America actually, and Amalia had been born. And I remember going to meet Amalia that day, and I feel like a mum's instincts, right? It's just such a weird thing, but she's gone, oh, look at her hands. Her hands are so big like yours. She's got big feet like yours. And she's trying to like convince me that Amalia could be mine. And for some reason, I bought into it. I thought, well, maybe I did do the maths, but I thought, well, I'm a bit of a weirdo like this. Like, how would I buy into it? And anyway, I thought for her mum's sake and for my sake, we better do a DNA test. And for the next 3 weeks, I ordered one. For the next 3 weeks, I kind of weirdly took on this role as not as Amali's dad, no way. Just loving this kid. I was helping support Amber. She was a lot. She was, you know, single, doing her best, and I'd help her. And we were good mates still anyway since our relationship. So the results came back 10 million to 1 that she's not my kid. And I remember feeling a little bit disappointed, but also a big relief as well. So thank God, because that's a whole nother life-changing event. And 9 months later, I'd become really, really close with the kid, with Amalia. I'd see her like every couple of days. Because I had a really good friendship with her mum, so it was easy for me, and I loved the kid. And then her mum said to me, she started to talk, and her mum said to me, I think she should call you dad, which is, I don't know how we got to this point. Up until that point on Facebook, for example, I was Uncle Danny, right? Mm. And somehow she convinced me, and I just thought, all right, why not? Because I wanted Amalia to have a good life too. And I said, yeah, okay. And basically from that day onwards, I became Amalia's father. And it was, I say weird because it really is, because people knew I was not the dad. And then all of a sudden I'm the dad. And it's fair enough, like a stepdad, but I'm not a stepdad because I'm not with the mum in any way, shape or form. And then just before Amalia started school 2 years ago, about this time, just before she started school, we sat her down. I'd done a whole bunch of research. I found some photos of her dad, and because I really didn't want her growing up and finding out later and getting upset and hating me and her mum and all that stuff. So I'd done a whole bunch of research. Like, this kid means the world to me, Tina, and I thought I need to do this right. I found some photos of her dad, and we went down to the water and we told her, me and her mum, that that I'm not her biological dad. I explained what biological meant. And the reason for the water is that she's got this beautiful memory, hopefully, of that's where she was told. Showed her some photos of her dad. She, like, instinct too for her daughter. She's gone, oh, I miss my dad. This really beautiful process. And yeah, and look, thank God I told her. I posted that on social media, that thing, and actually so many people have reached out and said thank you, and people have spoken about being 12 or 13 and finding out and never being able to turn back time, you know. So it's beautiful. I've never really shared that publicly like this, but I love And Amalia knows the story. Like, it's really good that I want her to keep bringing up her dad occasionally too, because I don't ever want her to forget. Yeah. And of course, we speak really good of her dad, which is confusing for her because I don't know, but I don't ever think any parent should ever bag the other parent ever. I don't ever think that's a thing. That's just me. But
she's your daughter.
Yeah, she's my daughter, of course. Yeah, she's my daughter.
Families are made in all kinds of
right.
ways.
Yep.
Yeah. Danny, let's talk about Encapsulator, your brand new project.
Yep.
You thought, this has been years in the making, you thought of this concept on your 6th anniversary of being sober. What happened?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was really grateful. I was excited. I just celebrating like 6 years clean. I thought to myself, I wonder what I was like when I entered recovery, like what was I thinking, how was I feeling? Very often in my life, and even at 6 years clean, I talk about it all the time because I'm a member of 12-step fellowship stuff, Narcotics Anonymous in particular, so I'd share my stories, but you don't really connect with what it's actually like. Over time you start to get a bit of a narrative that you tell, and I thought, I wonder what I actually felt, how was I thinking, how was I feeling, and I came up with this idea, this concept to record a video to my future self, which was very ambitious at the time because in recovery we talk about it being a daily program just for today, But I thought I'm going to record a video to myself for my 10-year birthday. I did a little bit of research that I could answer certain questions that went into like the old school kind of time capsule, and immediately I started the camera rolling. I started talking to my future self. I felt this was such a unique therapeutic process. This was me talking to my future self. I talked about my mom, my dad, my son. I hoped that everybody was okay. And I remember thinking, I hope I'm still alive too, because so many people in my journey of recovery this past 14 years are no longer with us, from heroin overdose, alcohol-related deaths, even, worse stuff than that. And I also thought, imagine other people in recovery being able to record video messages to their future self. It felt so good and unique, a tool to measure your growth. And after I recorded that video, one thing, it felt incredible. By the way, my daughter didn't even exist in that conversation. And 4 years later when I watched that video, it gave me such goosebumps. I'm so blessed. On my journey of recovery, I've worked really hard, and I mentioned that earlier, but every single thing I'd hoped for in the future had come true. Let me tell you some of the crazy things. I hoped I'd bought a house. I bought a small little place up in Queensland. I hoped that this is a bit, materialistic, but I hoped I was driving this certain car. I swear to God, I had that car in my driveway, and the car didn't even exist then either, because it was 2016 and this was a 2020 model. And I had this beautiful life. And really, there's this saying that they say in recovery, if you made a list of all the things you'd want in 5 years' time, you'd be selling yourself short. And it's because it's not about the material stuff. It's about that serenity that I feel inside. But yeah, so all this stuff had come true. And I took a trip to America in 2017 and I met all these entrepreneurs. I traveled from LA to New York doing 12-step fellowship stuff, which took me to some real dangerous, dark places in America. And I met all these incredible people who were funding themselves because their government doesn't look after them half as good as Australia does. All my rehabs were all paid for by the government, Over there, they got a hustle. And I came back to Sydney and I thought, I'm going to turn that concept into an app which has just been released, Encapsulator. So we provide video journal programs. We have 30 expert design programs. Hopefully we'll have 100 soon. And each program is different and unique depending on your needs. We've recently released the Bump to Bliss program for pregnant mums. We've got drug addiction programs, recovery with Danny Shannon. I've got my own personal recovery program, fitness programs, mental health and well-being. So to understand the concept, rather than the old school journal where you'd write, I've brought that to the 21st century. So we're recording video messages to our future self. We're responding to on-screen prompt questions. So each program has, let's say, 5 activities, and each activity has a series of questions which will help guide you to reach your goals, help you explore your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your future aspirations, and also, most importantly, providing this safe place for you to express yourself without any judgment. It's completely private and confidential. Nobody else sees your videos. And what I believe that does, and why it's so important, especially in the recovery space, is people are not talking about their feelings. They've got stuff bottled up. They're afraid to talk about their feelings. When we go see a counsellor or a therapist or some kind of professional, there's always this front, this ego, and we're unable to completely tell the truth. That's my experience. I'd love to hear anyone tell me they're completely themselves without judgment. Well, Encapsulator provides this safe place to express yourself without any fear of judgment. And I believe a problem shared is a problem halved. So once you share it once and you sort of name it and you get it off your chest, I feel like there's a way greater chance of us maybe seeking the professional help that you need to address those issues later. So we really are providing this safe place for people to start the language and start talking about their issues, achieving their goals. And more importantly, or one of the great things is that you got this moment in time that Encapsulators captured that would never have happened if it wasn't for our app and our on-screen prompt questions. So that's Encapsulated. We've been very lucky to have so much interest from all over the world. My journey has taken me like literally all over the world. I've been on podcasts and media from across the globe. Everyone loves this nostalgic idea of recording video to their future self. I should also mention a lot of people are very confronted by the process, and just to let those people know that, like I said, it's completely private, secure, confidential. This is for you. This is for you to help explore some of those emotions. And when we verbalize our goals out loud, it's very beneficial. It helps us to remain accountable and motivated as we move forward.
And Danny, not just through Encapsulator, but a lot of your work is in that recovery space, supporting those who are going through recovery, addiction. How does it feel now on the other side of things to be able to give back in that way?
Jojo, I am so blessed. You would not, but I notice it when I go away. I just spent a couple of days with a couple of mates in Melbourne and in South Australia. And one thing I do all day is I have to address the messages they come in, but I respond to every single message I get on my social media with an audio response. Every single message. There's been over 10,000 messages. I respond every single one with a 30-second audio message. And as I'm responding to those messages, I'm reading them out, and it's people often saying, Danny, you've helped change my life. Because of you, I'm doing this. I'm 8 days clean. I just got a message before I walked in from someone saying they're 8 days clean. It's incredible. And I don't really realise that because I just do it during the day. But until I'm with somebody else and they hear me saying those messages and they're saying, Danny, how many of those do you get? It's such a great, amazing spot to be. I also run online groups 3 or 4 days a week at 11 a.m. where I help teach a whole bunch of tips, tricks and hacks to help people plug into the higher forces of gratitude, as I say. They're mental health workshops funded through NDIS where I have over 30 topics that I choose. Really what I do is I provide a safe place for people to come together, feel heard. I want to hear what people have got to say and hopefully make some good connections with other like-minded people and have them walk away feeling a little bit better for the day. So that's another area that I get it's beautiful. It's crazy. My life, I go to bed 9 out of 10 nights with this really full heart. And it's really, I don't take it for granted, but these days it's just what I do every day. It's like I don't notice it until I go away and I have my mates point out to me what I'm doing. It spins me out.
I think it's great that it's become your normal. Once upon a time, this was your wildest dream. This was little Danny's wildest dream.
It wasn't even my dream. It wasn't even my dream, Georgia. I thought I'd be in jail institutions for the rest of my life, you know. Something just happened back then, and I talked about that spiritual awakening when I seen the moon that day, and it kind of just lit me up, and I thought, I can do anything, and I encourage everybody to dream big too, because like we honestly can do anything, and and I always think it's important for me to acknowledge that.
Danny Shannon, it has been a pleasure. Encapsulator is out now wherever you get your apps. DannyShannon.com.au is your website, and you can see all of what you've got going on. Follow Danny on socials, but it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, George. If I may just say that it's available on iOS and Android. And my name's Danny Shannon. You can find me anywhere on all my socials. I'm pretty engaged in all of that stuff. And yeah, I'd love to hear feedback.
Thank you so much to Danny Shannon for sharing his story today. Encapsulator is now available on the app stores, Apple or Android, and you can follow Danny's journey on socials and at dannyshannon.com.au. And as always, that information is in the show notes. I'm Georgia, and thank you for listening to this episode of Finding Hope. To help this podcast reach more people, you can subscribe and leave a review on your favourite podcast app, and share it with a friend who may need a little bit of extra hope right now. For now, I'll leave you with this verse. The night is far gone, the day is at hand. So then let us cast off the works of darkness and put on the armour of light. Romans 13, verse 12. Catch you next time.